Now let's begin. The rehearsal dinner had been perfect. The wedding had been flawless. And for 2 glorious weeks after Marcia married Ryan Wyatt, George Garrett slept better than he had in years. His only daughter had found happiness with a man who seemed to adore her, and that was all any father could ask for. George sat in his study on a Tuesday evening, reviewing quarterly reports for his architectural firm. At 62, he'd built Garrett & Associates from nothing into one of Chicago's most respected design companies. The business had provided well for his family, especially after his wife Sarah died 8 years ago. Marcia had been his anchor through that loss, and seeing her walk down the aisle had felt like closing one chapter and opening another. His phone rang at 9:47 p.m. Unknown number. Mr. Garrett? This is Sherry Doherty. I catered your daughter's wedding. George remembered her, a woman in her 50s who ran a small but excellent catering business. She'd been professional, her food exceptional. Of course, Sherry. Is everything all right? There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice trembled. Sir, I need to tell you something, and I've been wrestling with whether I should. I have a daughter myself, and if it were her. She took a shaky breath. When we were packing up after the reception, one of my staff found a jacket left behind. We checked the pockets before dry cleaning it, and there was something inside. George's hand tightened on the phone. What did you find? A phone. Not like a regular phone. It looked older, like a burner. And it fell open when we picked it up, and I saw. Her voice broke. I saw photographs, messages, things about your daughter, things about you and your business. Mr. Garrett, I wasn't snooping, but what I saw scared me. I have the jacket here. The phone's still in it. I didn't tell anyone else because I didn't know what to do. George's throat went dry. Whose jacket was it? Another pause. It had the groom's initials embroidered inside. R.W. Ryan Wyatt. The study seemed to tilt. George forced himself to speak calmly. Sherry, I need you to do exactly as I say. Don't touch that phone again. Put the jacket somewhere safe. I'm coming to you right now. Where are you? She gave him an address in Lincoln Park. George grabbed his keys and drove through the night-lit streets of Chicago, his mind racing. Ryan Wyatt had entered their lives 9 months ago, introduced by mutual friends at a charity gala. He was 34, handsome in that effortless way some men managed, and he'd swept Marcia off her feet. He worked in investment consulting, traveled frequently, and seemed to have impeccable taste and unlimited funds. George had run a background check before the engagement, standard stuff, nothing alarming. Ryan's credit was excellent, no criminal record, solid references. Everything checked out. But a burner phone hidden in a jacket? Photographs of Marcia? Sherry's catering kitchen occupied the ground floor of a converted brownstone. She opened the door before George could knock, her face pale and drawn. I'm sorry to do this to you, Mr. Garrett. I just kept thinking about my own girl. You did exactly the right thing. George stepped inside. The kitchen smelled of vanilla and bread. Can I see it? She led him to a small office and produced a garment bag. Inside was Ryan's tuxedo jacket from the wedding, tailored, expensive. Sherry reached into the inner pocket and withdrew a cheap Nokia flip phone, the kind you could buy at any convenience store. George pulled latex gloves from his pocket, a habit from years of handling architectural plans, and took the phone. It was still powered on. He opened it. The screen showed a text message thread. No contact name, just a number. The most recent message, sent the day after the wedding. Phase 1 complete. Subject fully committed. Beginning financial mapping. Estimated timeline. 6 to 8 weeks for full access, 12 weeks for clean exit. George's blood ran cold. He scrolled up. More messages, clinical and detached. Subject's father runs firm worth $40 million plus. Primary residence valued at $3.2 million. Investment accounts accessible through subject's trust access. Recommend romantic European honeymoon to establish pattern. Maintain emotional leverage. His hands shook. He kept scrolling. Then he found the photographs. The first few were of Marcia, candid shots, some taken before they'd even met. Pictures from her morning jogs, from the grocery store, from her office at the art gallery where she worked as a curator. Someone had been following his daughter for months before Ryan accidentally met her at that gala. But there were other photos too. Other women. Young, attractive, professional. And beneath each photo, notes. Chicago, 2019. $2.1 million. Completed. Denver, 2021. for $0.7 million. Complicated exit, relocated. Seattle, 2023. $1.8 million. Completed. George felt sick. He looked at Sherry. I need to make some calls. Can you keep this phone here, somewhere secure? There's a safe in my office. The jacket too. Please. George's mind was already 3 steps ahead. He couldn't go to the police yet. He needed to understand the full scope. He needed to verify this wasn't some elaborate mistake. And most importantly, he needed to protect Marcia without alerting Ryan that they were onto him. He drove home in a daze. At his desk, he opened his laptop and began searching. Investment consultant Ryan Wyatt, Chicago. Generic results. He tried variations. Nothing specific. Then he searched the cities from the photos. Missing persons, Denver 2021 young woman. Pages of results. He refined it. Suspicious death, Denver 2021 woman, wealthy family. 3 results down, he found it. Local art dealer found dead in apparent accident. Gretchen Morrison, 32, daughter of Morrison Real Estate mogul Clayton Morrison, died when her car went off a mountain road outside Denver. Her husband of 18 months, identified as Ryan Morrison, was out of town on business at the time of the accident. Investigators ruled it accidental, though Morrison's father publicly disputed the findings. The couple had recently updated their wills and life insurance policies. George's stomach lurched. He searched for Ryan Morrison's photo. The article included a small image from the funeral, a man in sunglasses and a dark suit, face partially turned away from the camera. It could be Ryan Wyatt. The build was right. The age fit. He searched Seattle next. Found a similar story from 2023, socialite's death under investigation. Amanda Chun, 29, died from an apparent overdose 3 months after marrying tech consultant Ryan Chun. Friends reported Chun, who had no history of drug use, had seemed withdrawn in the weeks before her death. Her family's company, Chun Technologies, had recently granted her access to a substantial trust fund. The article included a wedding photo. George zoomed in on the groom's face. It was Ryan Wyatt. Same smile, same eyes, same everything. His son-in-law was a serial predator who married wealthy women and either robbed them or killed them. And Marcia had been his wife for exactly 2 weeks. George didn't sleep that night. By 6 a.m., he'd compiled a file 2 inches thick. He'd found 5 women across different cities, all wealthy, all married to men who looked identical to Ryan Wyatt despite having different last names. 3 were dead under suspicious circumstances. 2 had survived but lost everything. Their money gone, their husbands vanished without a trace. He'd also found something else, a pattern. Ryan always moved on between weeks 8 and 14 of marriage. He was currently in week 2 with Marcia. George called his attorney at 7 a.m. Lewis Harden had been his lawyer for 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to Sarah's estate. Lewis, I need a very quiet meeting today, and I need you to bring someone who handles criminal law. Someone good, someone discreet. By noon, George sat in Lewis's conference room with 2 other men. The first was Claude Carlson, a former federal prosecutor who now ran his own practice. The second was Steven Serrano, a private investigator Lewis described as the best in the business, no matter what you need found. George laid out everything. The phone, the messages, the pattern of dead and missing women, the different identities. Claude studied the evidence with a prosecutor's eye. This is enough to open an investigation, but it's not enough to convict. The phone's concerning, but without knowing who sent those messages, Ryan's lawyer would argue it was planted. The women from other cities, the deaths were ruled accidents or overdoses. The missing money could be explained away as bad investments, especially if the victims are too scared or embarrassed to press charges. I don't care about conviction yet, George said quietly. I care about my daughter staying alive long enough to see him convicted. Steven Serrano leaned forward. He was a compact man with sharp eyes and a scar along his jawline. Here's what I can do. I can tail Ryan, document his movements, see if he contacts anyone suspicious. I can also dig into his background, his real background, not the fake one he showed you. These guys usually have a history before they get this sophisticated. How long will that take? For basic surveillance? I can start today. For the deep background, week, maybe 2. But Mr. Garrett, if this guy is as dangerous as you think, we need to be smart about this. If he realizes we're onto him, he might accelerate his timeline. Or worse. George understood the implication. If Ryan felt cornered, Marcia became a liability. What about the police? George asked Claude. Eventually, yes. But right now, we need more. Let Stephen do his work. In the meantime, I'll quietly reach out to some contacts in the FBI. If this guy has crossed state lines to commit these crimes, it becomes federal. That gives us more resources, better forensics, and protection for your daughter. George nodded slowly. I need to warn Marcia. No. All three men spoke at once. Lewis leaned across the table. George, I know every instinct tells you to pull her out of there right now. But if you tell her and she confronts him, or if she can't hide her knowledge, this could go very wrong very fast. She's my daughter. And we're trying to keep her alive, Claude said bluntly. This man has killed before. Maybe 3 times, maybe more. He's smart enough to evade police in multiple jurisdictions. If he thinks his cover is blown, there's no telling what he'll do. George pressed his palms against the table, fighting the urge to drive to Marcia's new house and drag her out himself. How do I just sit here knowing she's in danger? You don't sit here, Stephen said. You act normal. You stay in contact with your daughter like always. And you let me work. I'm going to find out who Ryan Wyatt really is, who he's working with, and what his endgame is. Then we'll have enough to either arrest him or... He paused. Handle it another way. George met his eyes. What other way? Let's see what we find first. They worked out a plan. Stephen would begin surveillance immediately. Claude would contact his FBI sources. Lewis would quietly prepare legal documents. Power of attorney for Marcia, trust protections, anything to make it harder for Ryan to access the family money. And George? George would call his daughter for their usual Wednesday lunch and pretend everything was fine. Marcia looked radiant. She met George at their favorite bistro near her gallery, practically glowing as she talked about the honeymoon plans. Ryan surprised me with tickets to Italy. We leave in 3 weeks. Florence, Venice, Rome. I've always wanted to see the Uffizi, and he remembered. Of course he did. The phone messages had mentioned a European honeymoon specifically. Keep her happy, distracted, off balance. George forced himself to smile. That's wonderful, honey. You deserve it after all the wedding stress. I still can't believe how perfect everything was. And Ryan's been so sweet. He keeps talking about the future, about maybe starting a family soon, about how he wants to take care of me so I can focus on my art instead of the gallery's business side. She sipped her wine, a slight frown crossing her face. Actually, he's been asking a lot of questions about my trust fund. How it's structured, when I get full access. I told him it's not until I'm 40, but he seemed really interested in whether there are exceptions. George's blood went cold. What kind of exceptions? Oh, medical emergencies, buying a house together, stuff like that. He said he was just trying to understand my financial situation since we're married now. He mentioned maybe we should combine our accounts, make everything simpler. Marcia, George chose his words carefully. There's no rush for that, is there? You've only been married 2 weeks. I know, Dad. I told him the same thing. But he was so sweet about it, said he just wants us to build our life together as a real team. She smiled, but George could see a tiny seed of doubt in her eyes. Why? Do you think it's weird? Every cell in George's body screamed to tell her the truth. Instead, he said, I think money can complicate things. Your mother and I kept separate accounts for years before we combined them. There's no harm in taking your time. Marcia relaxed. You're right. Ryan understood when I explained that. He said whatever makes me comfortable. She reached across the table and squeezed George's hand. I'm so lucky. Lucky to have him. Lucky to have you. I know Mom would be happy. George squeezed back, thinking of Sarah. If she were here, what would she do? She'd been the fierce one, the protector. She would have seen through Ryan immediately. Your mother would be very proud of you, George said. And she'd tell you the same thing she always did. Trust your instincts. If something ever feels wrong, don't ignore that feeling. Marcia laughed. Dad, everything feels right. I promise. George smiled and changed the subject, but inside, he was screaming. That evening, Stephen Serrano called. I've been on Ryan since this morning. He went to a coffee shop in Wicker Park and met with a woman. 40s, professional looking. They talked for 40 minutes. I got photos. Send them to me. The photos showed Ryan sitting across from a striking woman with dark hair. They weren't touching, but their body language was intimate, familiar. I ran her face through some databases, Stephen continued. Her name is Carolina Wyatt. She's Ryan's sister. He told us he didn't have any siblings. He told you a lot of things. Here's where it gets interesting. Carolina has a record. Securities fraud, identity theft. She served 18 months in federal prison and got out 4 years ago. Since then, she's been working as a financial consultant. I'm betting she's his partner in this whole operation. George stared at the photos. What were they talking about? I couldn't get close enough to hear, but I got these. Stephen sent more photos, shots of papers on the table between Ryan and Carolina. They were blurry, but George could make out columns of numbers and what looked like account information. They're planning it, George said. Planning how to drain Marcia's accounts. Looks like it. I'll keep watching. But Mr. Garrett? We're running out of time. If they're already at the planning stage, they might move faster than we thought. George ended the call and sat in the dark study. Outside, Chicago glittered with lights. Somewhere out there, his daughter was having dinner with a man who'd killed at least 3 women and was planning to make her the 4th. He couldn't wait for the FBI. He couldn't wait for perfect evidence. He needed to act. George pulled out his phone and made a call to someone he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. The line rang 3 times before a gravelly voice answered. Well, hell, George Garrett. Thought you'd forgotten about the old crew. Blake, I need your help. And it can't be legal. Blake Lambert had been George's college roommate, a wild kid who dropped out to join the Marines and then spent 20 years doing things he could never talk about. He'd retired and moved to Montana, but George knew he still had connections. The kind of connections that didn't ask questions. Tell me what you need. Chapter 2 began with George assembling a team that existed in the shadows. Blake flew to Chicago within 24 hours, bringing with him 2 former Special Forces operators, Ian McKinney and Floyd Bradford. They met in George's home office, a space that suddenly felt like a war room. Blake hadn't changed much, still muscular and intense at 58, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. George explained the situation. This Ryan character needs to disappear. That what we're talking about? No. George surprised himself with the firmness in his voice. I want him destroyed, but I want it legal. Or legal enough. I want him in prison. I want everyone to know what he is, and I want my daughter to see that she was never wrong to trust me. Ian McKinney, a broad-shouldered man with a measured way of speaking, nodded. That's actually harder than making him disappear. You want justice, Theater. I want justice, period. Floyd Bradford, lean and quiet, spoke up. Then we need leverage. We need to make him confess or lead us to evidence that's ironclad. We need to turn his sister against him or catch them in the act. Stephen Serrano joined them, sharing his surveillance reports. Carolina and Ryan had met 3 more times in the past week. They were careful, never in the same place twice, always in public spaces where they blended in. They're professionals, Stephen said. But professionals get comfortable. We just need to push them into a mistake. George studied the photographs spread across his desk. What if we give them what they want? Everyone looked at him. They want access to Marcia's money. What if we make it seem like they're going to get it? Make them overconfident. Make them move faster than they're ready to. Blake grinned. A trap. A trap, George confirmed. But we need Marcia safe first. Can we get her out of that house without her knowing why? Lewis Harden, who'd been listening quietly from the corner, cleared his throat. I might have an idea. What if I discover an error in her trust documents? Something that requires her signature in person, maybe at the family attorney's office in, say, Boston? It would take a few days to resolve. Ryan would want to go with her, George said. Not if the error involves provisions from before her marriage. Her status as a single beneficiary at the time the trust was created. We could make it sound very technical and boring. The kind of thing that requires her alone. No spouses allowed in the meeting for legal reasons. Stephen nodded. And while she's gone, we can search their house. Ryan's careful, but he's living there. There might be evidence, another phone, documents, something. A legal search, Claude Carlson pointed out. Nothing we find could be used in court. But it could tell us where to look legally, Blake countered. Could tell us what questions to ask, what warrants to seek. George made a decision. Lewis, set up the Boston trip. Make it happen in the next 3 days. Stephen, you keep watching Ryan. Blake, Ian, Floyd, I need you to plan the house search. And Claude. He turned to the former prosecutor. Call your FBI contacts. Tell them we have a case, but we need to move fast. I want them ready. The team dispersed. George sat alone in his study as the night deepened. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcia. Just finished watching a movie with Ryan. He's the best, Dad. Hope you're having a good night. Love you. George typed back. Love you too, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. He deleted 3 other drafts before settling on that one. Each draft had been a warning. Each draft could have gotten her killed. The next morning, Lewis called Marcia with the trust fund emergency. She was confused but agreed to fly to Boston that weekend. Ryan, as predicted, wanted to come, but Lewis was professionally apologetic, legal technicalities, confidentiality requirements, very boring banking law. Ryan didn't push. He was too smart for that. Marcia left on Friday morning. George drove her to the airport himself, and for a moment in the departure drop-off lane, he almost told her everything. But she hugged him, excited about the adventure, and he swallowed the words. Dad, you're shaking. Are you okay? Just cold, George lied. Have a safe flight. Call me when you land. She promised she would. George watched her walk into the terminal, then called Blake. She's gone. The house is yours. The search team entered Ryan and Marcia's house at 2 p.m. Stephen had confirmed Ryan was across town at a supposed business meeting. They had 3 hours, maybe 4. Blake led the way, with Ian handling electronics and Floyd documenting everything they found. George waited in Stephen's surveillance van, watching feeds from cameras the team wore. The house was pristine. Marcia's touches were everywhere. Artwork, photographs, her favorite books. Ryan's presence was subtler, almost deliberately minimal. A few clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, but nothing personal. No photos of family, no mementos, no history. It's like he's ready to leave at any moment, Floyd observed, searching the bedroom. This isn't a guy who's settling down. This is a guy who's camping. Ian worked on Ryan's laptop, trying to bypass the password. Encrypted. Seriously encrypted. This isn't consumer-level stuff. They searched for 2 hours and found nothing. No burner phones, no documents, no evidence. Ryan was too careful. Then Blake called from the basement. George, you need to see this. The video feed showed Blake standing in front of a wall in the unfinished basement. He pressed on a section of drywall, and it swung open, a hidden panel. Inside was a safe. Can you open it? George asked over the comm. Give me 10 minutes. It took Blake 7. The safe opened to reveal a treasure trove. 3 burner phones, multiple IDs with Ryan's photo but different names, and a laptop. Old, worn, clearly his real working computer. Don't touch the laptop yet, George said. We need the FBI to seize that legally. There's something else, Blake said, pulling out a folder. He opened it to reveal photographs. Dozens of them. Women. All young, all professional, all beautiful, and all dead. Blake's camera showed the photos clearly. Each woman's picture was paperclipped to a news article about her death. Accident. Overdose. Suicide. Drowning. Over and over. Jesus Christ, Ian whispered. There's at least 20 women here. George felt the world tilt. 20. Not 3 or 5. 20 women dead, their lives reduced to trophy photos in a monster's safe. And at the bottom of the folder, a photo of Marcia. Smiling, radiant, alive. Paperclipped to a blank news article template. The headline space was empty, waiting to be filled. Blake's voice was hard. George, we need to get this to the FBI right now. This is a serial killer. This isn't just fraud, this is murder. Systematic, repeated murder. We can't, George said, forcing himself to think through the rage. If we admit we broke in, it's inadmissible. Ryan walks on a technicality and disappears. We need another way to get law enforcement into that house legally. Then we call in a bomb threat, Ian suggested. Or a gas leak. Something that gets emergency services here with cause to search. Stephen's voice came over the comm from the van. Hold on. Ryan just left his meeting early. He's heading back to the house. You've got maybe 20 minutes. Pack it up, George ordered. Put everything back exactly as it was. We need another plan. The team worked fast. The safe was closed, the wall panel replaced. They erased any sign they'd been there and evacuated within 15 minutes. George sat in the van as they drove away, his mind racing. They'd found proof that Ryan was a serial killer, but they couldn't use it. They needed Ryan to lead them to that safe legally, or they needed him to make a mistake. An idea formed. Dangerous, risky, but possible. Blake, how would you feel about playing a ghost? Blake's expression turned curious. What kind of ghost? The kind that makes a guilty man panic. Ryan thinks he's untouchable because he's always been smarter than everyone else. What if we make him think one of his victims didn't die? What if we make him think someone's coming for him? Claude Carlson, listening on the conference call, spoke up. That's psychological warfare. It could work, but it could also make him run or hurt Marcia faster. Not if we control the narrative, George said. Not if we make him think his sister betrayed him. Turn them against each other. Stephen nodded slowly. Divide and conquer. If Carolina thinks Ryan's becoming a liability, she might flip on him to save herself. And if Ryan thinks Carolina sold him out, he might make a mistake trying to cover his tracks, Ian added. George pulled out his phone. Claude, how fast can your FBI contacts move? If we give them probable cause and a witness? Very fast. Then let's give them both. The plan formed over the next 6 hours. Blake would become Amanda Chun, or rather, someone claiming to be Amanda Chen's sister. They'd create social media accounts, build a paper trail, and make contact with Carolina, not Ryan. The message would be simple. I know what my sister's husband did. I know you helped him. And I have proof. Carolina would panic. She'd contact Ryan. And in their panic, they'd make mistakes. Meanwhile, George would keep Marcia safely in Boston, extending her trip with fictional complications in the trust paperwork. And the FBI, alerted by Claude's contacts to a possible serial killer operating across state lines, would begin their own investigation. They'd retrace Ryan's steps, interview people from his past lives, and build a legal case. All George had to do was keep everyone in play long enough for the trap to spring. At midnight, Blake sent the first message to Carolina's Facebook account, using a profile they'd created for Jennifer Chun, Advocate for Justice. Carolina Wyatt. We need to talk about Ryan. About Amanda. About all of them. I have evidence. Either you help me, or you go down with him. Then they waited. Carolina responded in 11 minutes. Who is this? What evidence? Blake, typing as Jennifer, sent back. Photos from Amanda's phone, recovered from her car after the accident. Texts between you and Ryan, planning everything. Bank transfers. I've been gathering this for 2 years. The FBI will be very interested. Unless you'd rather talk to me first. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, this is insane. I don't know what you're talking about. Then you have nothing to worry about. I'll just send everything to the Seattle PD and let them sort it out. I'm sure your parole officer will be very understanding. 3 minutes passed. Then, how do I know you are who you say you are? Blake sent a photo, a real photo of Amanda Chen's sister, pulled from social media, carefully cropped. We can meet, if you want proof. Or you can take your chances with the legal system. Your choice. What do you want? Ryan. I want him to pay for what he did to my sister. You help me, and maybe we can work something out. You stay silent, and you're an accessory to murder. The response took 5 minutes. When it came, George knew they had her. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. After that, I'm going to the FBI with everything I have, including your name. Blake closed the laptop. She'll call Ryan within the hour. He was right. Stephen's surveillance equipment, now monitoring Carolina's phone, picked up her call to Ryan at 1:47 a.m. The conversation was panicked, coded, but clear enough. Carolina, we have a problem. Someone from Seattle is asking questions. Ryan, that's impossible. We were careful. Carolina, she has photos. Texts. She mentioned Amanda by name. Ryan, where is she? I'll handle it. Carolina, Ryan, maybe we should shut this down. Maybe the Chicago thing is too risky. Ryan, it's too late to shut down. We're committed. And Chicago is our biggest score yet. Carolina, what if she goes to the police? Ryan, she won't. People like that want revenge, not justice. I'll arrange a meeting, and I'll make sure she never talks to anyone. The call ended. George felt sick. Ryan had just confirmed his plan to murder Jennifer Chun, and by extension, confirmed he'd murdered before. That's conspiracy to commit murder, Claude said. The FBI can use that. We need him to say more, George insisted. We need him to talk about Marcia, about the plan. We need it ironclad. Blake nodded. Then Jennifer agrees to meet him. But not Hermie. And when Ryan shows up expecting an easy victim, he finds something very different. The trap was set. Blake, using the Jennifer account, agreed to meet Ryan at a warehouse district location. Somewhere isolated, somewhere Ryan would feel safe. Somewhere the FBI would be waiting. But George had one more card to play. He called Sherry Doherty, the caterer. Sherry, I need you to do something that might sound strange. I need you to call Ryan and tell him you found another phone. Tell him you found it in a different jacket, and you want to return it to him privately. Can you do that?" Sherry's voice was uncertain. "Mr. Garrett, what's going on? I'm protecting my daughter, and I need Ryan to think he's about to be exposed. Can you help me?" She agreed. The call went out that afternoon. Ryan answered on the second ring. Sherry, her voice nervous, explained about finding another phone in a jacket. Ryan's response was calm, almost friendly. "Thank you so much for letting me know. Where can I pick it up?" They arranged a meeting for that evening, before Ryan's scheduled meeting with Jennifer Chun. But Sherry wouldn't be there. The FBI would. Everything was in motion. Marcia was safe in Boston. The FBI was preparing to move, and Ryan was about to walk into multiple traps simultaneously. George sat in the surveillance van with Stephen and Blake, watching the warehouse where Ryan would supposedly meet Jennifer. Federal agents were positioned around the building, invisible but present. Claude Carlson sat beside him, reviewing the legal framework. "When he shows up here intending to harm Jennifer, we have attempted murder. When he meets with Sherry, or rather, the agents posing as Sherry, and tries to retrieve the phone, we have evidence suppression. Combined with Carolina's panic and the phone records, we can get a warrant for his house. The safe. Everything. Will it be enough?" George asked. "For murder? We'll need to prove the deaths weren't accidental. But for fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, we have him. And once he's in custody, we can work on the murder charges." George's phone buzzed. A text from Marcia. "Dad, the lawyer is saying this might take another few days. I'm going crazy here. Can I just come home?" He typed back. "Trust me, sweetheart. This is important. I need you to stay there just a little longer. Is something wrong? Everything's going to be fine. I promise." He hated lying to her. But it was almost over. At 8 p.m., Ryan's car pulled into the warehouse parking lot. He stepped out, looking around cautiously. He was early, scouting the location. Blake, watching from a hidden position, whispered into the comm he's armed. Left side, concealed carry. George's blood went cold. He brought a gun to meet who he thinks is a lone woman. He's not planning to talk, Blake confirmed. He's planning to kill. Ryan circled the building, checking exits, looking for cameras. Professional. Careful. Then his phone rang. George watched through binoculars as Ryan answered, his expression shifting from cautious to alarmed. The FBI had just raided his house. Sherry's phone call had provided the probable cause. The burner phone from the wedding jacket, combined with Stephen's surveillance documentation and Claude's FBI contacts, had given them everything they needed for a warrant. Ryan stood in the parking lot, listening to whoever was on the other end of the call. Then he ran. He didn't run to his car. He ran into the warehouse, trying to escape through the back. FBI agents swarmed from every direction. Ryan Wyatt. Federal agents. Stop. He didn't stop. He kept running, pulling his gun. Drop the weapon. George held his breath. Everything depended on Ryan being taken alive. Dead, he became a mystery. Alive, he could be broken. A single shot rang out. Ryan went down, clutching his leg. Agents swarmed him, kicking away his gun, securing his arms. It was over. Almost. Chapter 3 began in an interrogation room where Ryan sat handcuffed, his leg bandaged, his face carefully neutral. Across from him sat Special Agent Daryl Hartman, a 20-year veteran of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. George watched through one-way glass, flanked by Claude and Blake. "You're making a mistake," Ryan said calmly. "I have no idea what this is about." Hartman opened a folder. Ryan Wyatt. Also known as Ryan Morrison, Ryan Shun, Ryan Bradford, Ryan. He flipped through pages. "We've found 7 different identities so far. How many more are there?" Ryan's expression didn't change. "I want a lawyer. You absolutely deserve one. But before he gets here, I want you to know what we found in your house. The safe in the basement. The photos. The phones. The IDs." For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed Ryan's face. Surprise. He'd hidden that safe perfectly. How had they found it? "I also want you to know," Hartman continued, "that your sister is in the next room, and she's been talking for the past 2 hours. About Amanda Chun. About Gretchen Morrison. About at least 15 other women. She's making a deal, Ryan. And that deal involves giving us you." It wasn't entirely true. Carolina was in custody, but she hadn't talked yet. But Ryan didn't know that. "I want my lawyer," Ryan repeated. "Of course. But I thought you should know, we're also bringing in someone else. Someone who survived you. Someone who can testify about your methods, your patterns, everything. Ryan's facade cracked slightly. That's impossible. Is it? Maybe you weren't as careful as you thought. Maybe one of them lived, and she's been watching you, waiting for the right moment. Maybe she's the one who gave us everything. George watched Ryan's mind work, saw the panic starting to seep in. Ryan had built his whole operation on being invisible, untraceable. The idea that someone from his past had survived and hunted him was his worst nightmare. The lawyer arrived, a public defender, since Ryan's assets had been immediately frozen. The interrogation paused, but the damage was done. Ryan was rattled. Outside the interrogation room, Claude pulled George aside. Carolina's ready to talk. She wants full immunity. Can we give her that? Partial immunity, maybe. She's an accessory, but she didn't kill anyone herself. The prosecutor is willing to offer a deal if her testimony puts Ryan away for life. Then make the deal. Carolina's confession took 4 hours. She'd met Ryan, her actual brother, when he got out of prison 7 years ago after serving time for fraud. He'd had a plan: target wealthy women, marry them, take everything, and disappear. Carolina had the financial expertise to move the money untraceable. They'd started small, then gotten bolder. The deaths had been accidents at first. Gretchen Morrison really did drive off that mountain road. But the insurance payout had been substantial, and Ryan had realized dead wives were more profitable than divorced ones. He got better at it, Carolina said, her voice shaking. More careful, more creative. He'd researched them for months before making contact. Learned their routines, their vulnerabilities, what they wanted to hear. Then he'd become exactly that person. What about Marcia Garrett? Agent Hartman asked. Carolina's face crumpled. She was supposed to be the last one. The biggest score. Her trust fund. Her father's company. Ryan calculated we could get $40 million if we played it right. Then we'd retire, disappear completely. And the plan was? The same as always. Isolate her from her father. Gain control of her accounts. Then. She couldn't finish. Then what? Then make it look like an accident. Ryan was thinking a boating accident on the Italian honeymoon. He'd already scouted locations. George felt his legs give way. He sat down hard in the observation room chair. Blake put a hand on his shoulder. She's safe, George. She's safe. But it had been so close. 3 more weeks, and Marcia would have been on that boat with a monster who planned to kill her in deep water and collect $40 million. The interrogation continued. Carolina gave them everything. Bank accounts, safe houses, contacts who'd helped with false identities. The FBI began coordinating with police departments in 8 states. By midnight, they'd identified 23 women Ryan had targeted. 8 were confirmed dead. 4 were missing, presumed dead. The rest had survived, but lost everything. The survivors were being contacted. Most had been too ashamed or scared to come forward before. Now, with Ryan in custody, they were ready to testify. George sat in Claude's office as the sun rose over Chicago. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. We have him, Claude said. Murder, fraud, conspiracy. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Multiple life sentences, probably. When can I tell Marcia? The FBI wants to interview her first, get her statement. She's a victim too, even if Ryan didn't get far enough to hurt her. But yes, call her. Bring her home. George pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Marcia answered on the first ring. Dad, finally. The lawyer says the paperwork is done and I can come home. I have a flight in 3 hours. Is everything okay? Everything's going to be okay, George said. But Marcia, I need you to stay in Boston a little longer. The FBI needs to talk to you. Silence. Then, carefully. Why would the FBI need to talk to me? George took a deep breath. Because Ryan isn't who he said he was. And I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But I need you to hear this from me before anyone else tells you. He told her everything. The phone, the investigation, the other women. Carolina's confession. The plan to kill her. Marcia didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. He was going to kill me? Yes. On our honeymoon? Yes. And you knew? You knew and you didn't tell me. I was trying to protect you. If you'd confronted him. I spent 2 weeks sleeping next to a man who wanted me dead. Her voice rose, hysterical. I trusted him. I loved him. I know. I'm so sorry. She was crying now, deep sobs that tore at George's heart. How could I not see it? How could I be so stupid? You're not stupid. He's a professional. He's fooled people for years. I invited him into our family, into our home. What if he'd hurt you? What if? She couldn't continue. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. And he can't hurt you now. He can't hurt anyone ever again. The FBI arranged for Marcia to fly back to Chicago with an escort. George met her at the airport, and when she saw him, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. They didn't go home. They went to a hotel, somewhere Ryan had never been, somewhere safe. Marcia curled up on the bed, still wearing the clothes she'd packed for her trust fund trip to Boston, and stared at the wall. I keep thinking about all the times he touched me, she whispered. All the times he said he loved me. Was any of it real? No, George said gently. None of it was real for him. But your feelings were real. Your love was real. He's the one who's broken, not you. How do I trust anyone again? George didn't have an answer for that. The trial preparations took 6 months. Ryan pleaded not guilty to everything, maintained his innocence, and fired 3 lawyers before accepting that no defense would save him. The evidence was overwhelming. Carolina's testimony, the survivors' accounts, the physical evidence from the safe, all of it painted a picture of a systematic, calculating killer. Marcia had to testify about the whirlwind romance, the questions about her money, the honeymoon plans. She did it with her head held high, refusing to let Ryan see her break. When she took the stand and Ryan's eyes met hers, she didn't look away. You didn't break me, she said, even though that wasn't a question anyone had asked. You tried, but you failed. Ryan's mask finally slipped. For just a moment, George saw rage in his son-in-law's eyes. Pure, hateful rage that proved Carolina had been telling the truth about everything. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Ryan was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. Carolina, who'd cooperated, got 15 years. George sat in the courtroom as the sentence was read and felt something release in his chest. It was over. Finally over. A year later, Marcia reopened her art gallery. She'd sold the house she'd shared with Ryan, donated the wedding gifts to charity, and rebuilt her life one careful step at a time. She still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched when someone showed interest in her too quickly. But she was healing. George visited her new gallery on opening night. The space was beautiful, filled with light and color. Marcia had curated a show featuring emerging artists, women who'd overcome trauma to create something meaningful. I thought about what you said, Marcia told him, standing among the paintings. About Mom telling me to trust my instincts. I did have instincts about Ryan. Little warnings I ignored because I wanted the fairy tale. You can't blame yourself. I'm not. But I'm learning to listen to those warnings now. To trust myself. She squeezed his hand. And to trust you. You saved my life, Dad. I would do anything for you. You know that. I do. And I'm grateful every day that I have a father who would assemble a private army and take on the FBI to protect me. She smiled, and it reached her eyes for the first time in months. That's pretty badass. George laughed. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation as a boring architect. They stood together, watching people admire the art. Sherry Darty arrived, bringing cookies she'd made. Blake Lambert flew in from Montana, bringing his new wife. Steven Serrano stopped by with his daughter, who wanted to see the paintings. The team that had saved Marcia's life gathered now to celebrate her resurrection. As the evening wound down, Marcia pulled George aside. I have something to tell you. I've been seeing someone. George felt his chest tighten. Oh, a therapist, Dad. Relax. She grinned. But there is a guy? He's a librarian at Northwestern. Very quiet, very patient. We've been on 3 dates, and I haven't told him about Ryan yet. But I'm going to. And if he runs, he's not right for me anyway. And if he doesn't run, then maybe I'll get my fairy tale after all. But this time, I'll keep my eyes open. George pulled her into a hug. Your mother would be so proud of you. She'd be proud of both of us. Outside, Chicago glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in a maximum security prison, Ryan Wyatt sat in a cell, his perfect plans destroyed by the one thing he'd never counted on. A father who refused to let his daughter become another trophy photo in a monster's collection. George looked at Marcia, strong, resilient, alive, and knew that every risk he'd taken had been worth it. Some wars were worth fighting. Some people were worth saving. And some monsters needed to be destroyed, no matter what it took. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe